From the headquarters of Team Cowboy, coming to you all the way from Anderson, South Carolina, this is the Finance Cowboy Show, where we're going to teach you how you can create your dream life through the greatest asset in the world, real estate. I'm your host, Jaron Sustar, and I went from having 0 properties in 2018 to a portfolio of over $5 million worth of real estate by 2021, and I am excited to be able to teach you all the lessons, tips, and tricks that I have learned throughout my journey, while also introducing you to some of the greatest real estate minds in this entire world. So without further ado, let's get this party started. What's up, friends? If you've been wanting to get into real estate, or maybe you're in real estate and you got a few properties, but you want to scale, but you're just not sure how, I want to help you out. The waitlist to my signature course and mentorship, the Rental Academy, is officially open. All you have to do is text me the word WIN, W-I-N, to 864-660-7148, and that will put you on the wait list. So you'll be the first to know when the doors are open to the Academy, so you can ensure that you get a spot. And along the way, I'm going to send you a lot of cool behind the scenes content as well as we lead up to the day that the doors actually open to the course. There are tons of students already currently enrolled in the Rental Academy, having amazing success, and I can't wait for you to join in with those folks who are already crushing it so that you can change your life for the better. You can give yourself your time back, you can have that financial freedom, and you can build generational wealth for years to come. All right, so we have the one and only Chris Singleton on the podcast with us today. What's up, Chris?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Good. So I got a little surprise. I didn't even show you this beforehand. Me and Chris both played baseball at Charleston Southern University. All right. He came in. When did you get to school? 2014?
Yeah, 14.
So I graduated in 13. So we missed each other, but I would go back every now and then, and I saw him. Chris was way better than I was. He ended up, playing professional ball, which we can talk about in a minute. But I thought, I've never done this on one of these podcasts before because he's going YouTube too. This will be the first podcast that I've ever done in a CSU helmet. I figured I had to bring it out, dude. I hadn't wore it. I mean, it's been 10 years now since I graduated, and I stole it out of my locker room on the last day. So I was like, what better time to snag it than today than with this interview with you?
That's funny, man, because I've seen people do that. I've seen people just take the helmet and let it ride. So they're not missing it. They're not missing it. So that's what's up. I love it.
No, I got my blue one sitting out there. I got all my jerseys. So anyways, I look like a clown on here, but we're going to rock it for a while. So Chris has an amazing story, man. Chris, has been through a lot, but he turned a lot of negative into an unbelievable positive story. I'll let him hit on it here in a second. And we're going to get into real estate because he's crushing the real estate game too. But he goes around and speaks 150 days out of the year telling his story. And it's unbelievably powerful. He gets to speak to, everybody. It seems like I follow you and you'll go to schools, small events, to huge events, some of the biggest names that people have heard. So give a little backstory, Chris, on who you are. We'll get into real estate in a minute, your story, and how you were able to turn that into a positive.
Yeah, man. So I'm one of the people that believe you can turn your pain into your purpose. And my pain was losing my mom. I lost my mom at a terrible tragedy. It was a church shooting back in 2015 at my church, Mother Emanuel AME. A guy who literally said he wanted to start a race war in this country. He came in, he took 9 lives in hopes that people would hate each other so much that he would divide us. That was his mission. I lost my hero. I lost my biggest fan in that shooting. And following that, I said, man, I want to do the exact opposite of what this guy was trying to do. And so, yes, I was playing baseball, but in the off season, I was always traveling around speaking. I was speaking at local stuff, little stuff, and then it just started to grow over time. Started to grow, and now, like you mentioned, I'm on the road 150 days a year, keeping the memory of my mom alive and the legacy of my church family, keeping that alive. And so that's what I do now. That's what I get to do.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome that you took that, and turned it into a positive. That was a big story, and you were young at the time, man. You got into college 2014, so you'd have been 18 in 2014, and this happened when you, I guess, were around 19 years old, and here you are, and it's supposed to be what is arguably the best time of your life. You're at college. I mean, CSU, I'm sure there was some fun at college, but we all had a great time while we were there. You're playing ball, living your dream, and then then you had to go through this. And I can only imagine, I'd love for you to speak to it, because we all think we have adversity, whatever it is. And everybody has their own struggles, but this was, this is something that most people don't have to deal with. This was a national story. You were, speaking a lot before you became a, top keynote speaker like you are today. What was that like, battling through that, trying to make the best of it, but you're going through this tough situation while still trying to play ball and be a kid too?
Yeah, man. I think what a lot of times what we'll say as athletes, we'll say we use our sport as our getaway. That's, our sport's our therapy. But I realized something though. I realized for me, it wasn't just the sport was my therapy. It was like the success in my sport was a therapy, right? The applause and not having to, process my thoughts. That was the stuff I was going through. There was an ESPN documentary done on me and my mom about me playing baseball after I lost my mom and honoring her with the sport. And so like baseball consumed me at that time. That was what I did. And I had tons of fun playing, right? But looking back on it, I wish I would have really dealt with my emotions a little bit better. I was on the Today Show. I was hitting BP with the Yankees. All these different things were happening, but deep down, I was struggling. I was struggling, but I wasn't telling everybody that I was struggling inside. And so, as time went on, I finally got mature enough to realize, man, it's okay for me to let out these emotions. And I went through something insane. I went through something that nobody, 99.9% of people won't ever go through, but I was trying to pretend like I was okay, even though I wasn't. And I've just learned as I've grown over the last, 8 or 9 years. Um, Number one, it's okay for us to go through stuff and be hurt. And number two, like we all have an option to do something with that pain, right? Whether it's you lost your parent to cancer, running a 5K every year in their honor, get to fight cancer, right? Or what you lost somebody that you love to gun violence, or maybe you're passionate about gun violence, or like whatever the topic may be. Everybody has to have something to do with their pain for sure.
That's awesome, man. And work through it over time. And now it looks as though, you've taken that and you've made the most of it in a lot of different ways. So you come out of college and you go straight into professional baseball. So you got drafted by the Cubs in 2017. What was that like? What was that experience like?
Yeah, man, I was excited. I had a pretty good freshman season, a really good sophomore season. Played in a wood bat league, where you're trying to get your draft stock up. Had a great
Yep.
summer, was an all star, and I came back my junior year, man, and that's when my father passed away. And so at this time, I lost my mom 2 years prior. She was killed. Uh, and then I lost my dad, and all the pressure was on my shoulders. I had so much pressure on myself. I found out my girlfriend was pregnant, my wife now, but my girlfriend then. Like it was
Man,
everything was like it was just life was giving punching me left and right. And so I really struggled that junior season. I started off really bad. People were saying I would go between the fifth and 10th round getting drafted, but I had a really rough start to my junior season. A lot of teams that were looking at me, stopped coming to my games a lot. But the Cubs kept coming. Had a strong finish to the season that year. Stole some bases, played a pretty good center field. Didn't hit what I wanted to, but I hit pretty good, right? I wanted to hit like 400, right? That was my goal. That didn't
don't
that
we
didn't
all?
happen. That didn't happen, but things worked out, and I got drafted by the Cubs, and I was so excited. And the cool thing about the Cubs, man, uh, they knew that I was a draft me, sign me guy. So if you don't know what that means, and you're not an athlete. That means, hey, if you draft me, I don't care how much money you give me, I'm signing. I was a junior. I said I got my baby on the way. I'm signing. And they knew that they could have given me 25 grand. They said, Chris, we love you, we love your character, we love your game. We're going to give you $100,000. So they gave me $100,000
Wow.
as my signing bonus as a junior. And then yeah, played baseball, and I was speaking in the off season, taking care of my little brother and
Cool.
my little sister. Man, I've been through a
Wow.
lot, so I've had to grow up pretty quick. And but God has blessed things for me thus far.
That's awesome, man. I got to ask, and nobody listen to this podcast because this podcast is strictly real estate. I have an athletes podcast. I'd love to have you on later where we just like talk sports. But I got to ask, and I'll send this file to him to see what he has to say. Who's a better outfitter, you or Bobby Eisen? I mean, who am I taking if I got one pick?
Yeah, good question. I would say defensively, I'm going to definitely say myself,
You
100%,
got it.
no questions asked.
Let's go.
But I will say this: he's got that hit tool a little bit better than I do. That man can spray it all everywhere around. So I'll give
And
him
I've never
that for
seen
sure.
anything like it. I played with him
Yeah.
2 years, and I think it was 2 years. And I'm like, what are you doing here? I mean, why aren't you at Clemson, Carolina? Like, the dude was on base every time, it felt like.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll give him that. But if you need me to rob a home run or go steal a bag or make a diving catch, I'll take that one. But at the
Let's
plate, I got to
go.
tip my cap. Yeah.
I'm gonna get some junk talking started here, baby. Let's go. I love it. I love it. So, all right, we get done with professional baseball and you get into speaking, I imagine, full time, correct?
Yeah, man. Started speaking. 2018 was my first year doing six figures as a speaker. So drafted in set 2017, 2018, playing minor league baseball, not making any money, but speaking really started to take off as a career. I didn't know it was. I just wanted to share my heart. But all of a sudden, people started asking me, "Well, Chris, what's your fee?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, $1,000 or $500 and 2,000, 3,000." And I just started to get paid as a speaker. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. So I imagine this was my story. Was I got my finances cleaned up, right? Got all my debt taken care of, and then I started making some money. And then for me, it was, okay, I have this extra money. I can be like all these other clowns that I grew up with and go waste it all, getting a bunch of consumer debt, or I can be smart with it and start to invest. And for me, that asset was real estate. And obviously, knowing your story, you decided to take that same plunge too. When was it for you when you said, okay, I got some money coming in, we need to do something with it? And why real estate? There's a lot of different places you could invest, crypto, stocks, you name it, but you chose real estate. What was that thought process?
Yeah, there's two things that I think are important with my journey in real estate. The first one is after we lost my mom, our house got foreclosed on. I didn't know
Wow.
that, I didn't know about mortgages, didn't know about a bank taking your home, investors coming in and short sales. I didn't know about anything about that, right? I do know that somebody bought our house, I think it was for like 90,000. And if you like Googled our house on Zillow, it would say 150 at the time. And I said, man, how did they buy this house for 90,000? Nothing's wrong with it. It's worth 150. And that's what we owed. That's what we owed. And the guy that bought it was actually a nice guy. He asked because I guess he knew my story. He said, "Well, Chris, do you want the washer and dryer in here?" And I was like, "I'll just give it away." I didn't. If I knew what I knew now, I would have kept the house. Obviously, I would have found out a way to make sure we keep that house. Um, Lost the house, and uh, the second thing was that the reason why I got into real estate, I had a coach, a baseball coach, who coached at me for North Charleston. I won't say his
Kenny
name, but he's
Wilkinson.
pretty.
Oh, I
Yeah, yeah,
said it. Well,
yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
Coach
You
Kenny.
said it.
He's the man.
Yeah,
Well, don't spill too much about him, but this man is the godfather and has poured into more
yes.
kids' lives than anybody else I know.
And I call him. He's like blood to me, man. I'm black. He's white, but he's like my granddaddy. I'm telling you,
Yep.
man. And he showed me some of his properties, and he's like, well, this is how I'm able to coach. He doesn't coach. He doesn't make any money coaching. He just does it because he's passionate about it. But he has his real estate that pays for his life, pays for all of his expenses. And I see that, and I'm thinking, man, okay. And so what I did was in 2018, I finally had my mom's life insurance. I was 21, so I got to get my mom's life insurance. I had my money from the Cubs signing bonus that was still left because Uncle Sam came in and took 35 grand of the 100 grand, so I only had 65. But what I did was I bought a duplex and I bought it cash. I bought this duplex cash for $175,000, and I said, I read. By the way, I listened to every single Bigger Pockets podcast that there was. I listened to literally every single one before I bought this because I had a little bit of the analysis paralysis, but I wanted to make sure I had all the information. And then I saw I could buy it for 175. I put 25 into it. I was renting out both sides for 1,000, and things were great. And I said, okay, this is what I want to do. And I got my wife on board, which is really important. I got my wife on board with me, and I said maybe we can't have all the $5 Starbucks right now. Maybe we can't have Amazon boxes at the house every day right now. But listen, this is our goal. We want to get to. I used to say 10 houses paid off by 40 was used to be my goal. But
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how we started. Yeah.
That's really cool. One of the themes in this podcast, and when I started it, I didn't know what all I'd hear from reoccurring themes. And one of them that I hear so often is the significant other on board. And I preach this as often as I can. That is so important, because if you are a unit, if you're a married unit and you're butting heads and one person's not on board, it's going to cause a lot of problem. And I think, and you can speak to this, what it was like talking with your wife through it. Communication is key. I think you got to be able to spell out why you're wanting to do what you're wanting to do, to be able to convince the other, if they need convincing, why they should do it. But you got to have that significant other on board, or it's not going to end well whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the good book tells us that we're called to be priests, providers, and protectors for our families. And so, my wife, I want to make sure I'm doing all those things for her, and really sitting down, saying, "Hey, this is what our plan is." There is uh, I guess I could say, an end date for. Hey, then you may be able to have the Starbucks every single day, right? Then you may be able to have the, I guess, $5,000 Chanel bag, but we can't have that right now. And so that was a conversation we had to have initially starting off. And even today, my making money, and you want to have a place for that money. Because if, your significant other just sees hundreds of $1,000s or whatever it may be, or even 10,000, if it's 10,000 for you, or a million just in your bank account, they're going to say, well, shoot, why can't we have this G-Wagon? It costs
Mm-hmm.
280. We got 280 sitting, right? Or why can't we have this? And so having them on the same plan is very, very important, and I've learned that. So yeah, my wife's a rock star.
That's awesome. Yeah, it allows you, when you got two of you on the same page, man, the sky is the absolute limit. So let's talk about that first deal, that duplex, what the numbers look like on it, why you chose it, why you chose that area. And then we'll get into how did you scale from there. So it sounds like you bought that first one cash. Where at, and why'd you choose a duplex in that certain location?
Yeah, so I bought at a place in South Carolina, and it's called Goose Creek, South Carolina. My wife is Brazilian. There's a very high Brazilian population in the city of Goose Creek, and I knew for a fact. To this day, we have like 20 renters that are ready if we buy more units. But back then, my wife would say, "Hey, if it's in Goose Creek, Chris, I can rent it out in a heartbeat. There's no question about that." And so I told the realtor that I was working with, who's also an investor, which was very important. I said, "Hey, this is the criteria that I'm looking for. I want to have the 1% rule, right? I want to. If I buy it for 200, I want to make at least 2,000 a month from it in gross income. That was my rule. I said, that's what I'm looking for." And he said, "Awesome, let's do it." So we went out, we found this duplex. He said, "Chris, it needs a little bit of work." I think they were trying to sell it for 200 at the time, and we offered 175. We got it accepted, paid cash, put 25 into it, all in at 200, and we made our 1% rule. So that's how the first one went down.
That's awesome. And so you went all cash on that. Now, have you continued to go all cash on the rest of them, or did you start working in different forms of financing?
Yeah, so I've done different forms of financing. I've done all cash. I bought deals from wholesalers. Right now I have my career being a professional speaker. Um, my income went from 2018, six figures, 2019, 150, 2020, 340, 2021, 550, 2022, 840. And this year, 2023, I'm projected to do my first $1 million for my income. So my income has
Congrats.
grown tremendously. So some of those deals I was buying cash, but also some of them I was buying at a 3% interest rate, or 3.25% interest rate. And now I'm looking back saying, thank God I didn't buy all those cash, right? So yeah, I've done both.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we hear so many different ways that people buy. I have people on here that only do seller financing or wrap mortgages, only do Burr method. They're only doing multifamily. And myself, I've done a mix. I don't own any outright. I went in, from the get go saying I was gonna, leverage debt, and like you said, luckily, up until a year ago, you get it at pretty darn cheap rates. We're talking, 3, 4, 5%, depending on what type of loan you did. But when you're in a position like Chris, and there's probably a lot of high income earners that listen to this, you can buy properties in cash, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If you listen to social media or a lot of podcasts or even read books, you'll see, hey, the only way to do this is to leverage debt. But that's not the only way, because Chris, you can probably speak to this, but when you buy with cash, yeah, your cash on cash returns not as good as it would have been if you had taken out debt, but I'm sure you got a heck of a decent amount of cash flow coming in
Yeah,
because you
for
own some
sure.
properties outright.
Yeah, I would say for me in my journey, just looking back, I was making a good bit of money and I was nervous about blowing it. So I was buying stuff left and right. And some of it was cash from wholesalers. And then eventually I said, man, you know what? I can leverage the money that I'm making. I know how to be smart with money now. I just was so nervous about blowing it all. I just wanted to put it in an asset and not think. But my goal was always to have 10,000 net cash flow every single month. That was my goal before I really started making money, a lot of money, I should say. Was hey, 10,000 net cash flow every single month. I could retire then was what I used to say, right? And now my burn rate is like 20 grand a month, so I can't retire off 10. but but back then, that's what I was thinking. And so out of the 19 units we have right now, I believe 10 of them are paid off in full, and the other nine have loans on them. And personally, it makes me feel really safe, knowing that that's the case. But I'm readjusting my goals. My net cash flow every month is about 12,500, and so I've already exceeded that goal that I had before. Um, but I'm always growing. So I don't know what my goals will continue to look like 20 years from now. But I know my next goal is the 15,000 a month in cash flow, net cash flow to me and my family. So everybody's got their own goals. You got to figure out what it is for you.
Yeah, that's spot on. And what I think is interesting is a lot of investors, I did the same thing when I started. They have this number in their mind, and I coach a lot of people on real estate. And when I'll talk with them the first time, hey, look, we're just trying to buy one property a year for 5 years. And I was the same way. I'm like, man, if I can just get one a year, eventually get to 10, I'm good. And what you realize is as soon as you buy that first one, you get bit by the bug. And it's almost like I was on a podcast with a guy recently, and he was like, I started itching, for the next one. He was fiending for the next one because you realize, wow, number one, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was. It wasn't as scary as I thought it was. And now I don't want to neglect the fact that people have hesitations before they start. I very vividly remember the feeling I thought before I bought that first property. I was so scared. You think about all the what ifs, what could go wrong. But then when you get on the other side of the fence, this is one time in life where the grass is actually greener. If you take the
Yeah.
plunge into real estate, the grass is actually greener. And I got to a point where I brainwashed myself that not investing in real estate was riskier for my future than investing in real estate. And
Mm,
when you get that through your thick skull, you will realize, okay, I need to jump into this asset. And not only do I just need to jump in a little bit, I need to dive head freaking first, because eventually I'll work myself to a position like Chris is, where you're bringing in $12,000 a month in cash flow. And some of you listening to this right now are like, oh my gosh, if I had 12,000 a month in cash flow, I could retire. And yeah, you could. And guess what? You can get there. Now, it may not happen as quickly as it will for Chris or as it has for myself or for anybody else. But if you put that plan in place, you hear Chris said, I had goals, and he changes his goals. They're dynamic. You put those goals in place, and you set a date and put a plan of action together. You're going to achieve a lot more than you thought you were capable of. And I'm sure you look back, Chris, and you're like, dang, this is a great decision. Why didn't I start sooner?
yeah, absolutely. But I think also we need to say that, some things will go wrong. But the thing about real estate, it's like time heals just about all wounds. Time in real estate, you don't lose, right? I think for me personally, one mistake I made, I'll give an example, is I was so adamant about buying stuff cash and beating all the offers that I bought a house from a wholesaler, um, and I think I bought it at like 130, I want to say, and fix it up and all that stuff. And I probably put like 35 or 40 into it. Okay, so let's say I'm all in for 175, and I got my appraisal back for like 160, and I'm like, I didn't get my appraisal. That's one mistake I made. I was like, I don't care. I'll buy it right now. Let's do it. Let's do it. And so I made a mistake. But years down the road, right, 2.5 years down the road, I'm still in the green, and my rent. I still made my 1% rule that I wanted. So time heals, but we're going to make mistakes. That's what we need to know. But we learn from them, and
Yep.
that's what I've learned with my portfolio. And my wife is my superhero who also manages all of our properties. We have great tenants. I mean, amazing tenants, and we've got an amazing handyman that is on call. And so she manages things for me. Our process with me and my wife. Hey, I make the money to buy it. She gets the tenants in. She helps out with the renovations. She knows the contractors because she is Brazilian. Um, and she finds the tenants, get everything set up, and Daddy brings home the bacon to buy more. That's what I do.
I love it, bro. Y'all got that system in place. That's what
For
I'm
sure.
talking about. So what is your sweet spot? Everybody likes to know, what do you look for? We got the 1% rule, but I know you got the 8-unit multifamily, but I think the majority of yours are outside of that. So where are you looking? What class neighborhoods, what type of home, what condition?
Yeah, great question, man. I know that I look for a specific area. So the area of Goose Creek, South Carolina, the area of Hanahan, South Carolina, those areas, there's a large renters population there, and I would say they're probably B minus class neighborhoods, right? Um, and I always look for value add stuff. I want to buy it at a low price. I want to be able to burr it if I want to, but I usually don't, right?
Yeah.
But I want to be able to, and it works if I want to do it. Um, but really specific locations is kind of my buy box. Now, right now, I would love to look at more 8 to 12 unit stuff. But man, I'm still buying up duplexes. I bought two duplexes 2 months ago. So I'm always looking for more in this specific area because I know I have tons of renters who've been phenomenal so far. And I think I've been renting since, yeah, 2018 was my first property. So for the last 5 years, I've had one person actually move out. Everybody else has been in there.
Wow. Which means you guys are managing very efficiently. And I'd love to dive in on that. I do want to make one comment on what you said. Chris said he's buying in cash a lot of times, okay? But he could burr them. What that means is he is running numbers on these properties and still making sure he's getting them at good deals. So if you're listening to this and you're a cash buyer, you want to build a portfolio buying homes in cash, that's fine. We still want to buy good deals. And so make sure you're getting undervalued deals in markets where you could cash flow if you did have a note on them, and they're going to appreciate over time, because what can happen sometimes when you're buying with cash is you can get carried away and just buy whatever. And, the returns aren't quite where they should be. So I thought that was a good nugget that the audience should take away.
Yeah. One more thing too. So not every time I'll buy it, I'll buy cash. But I'm thinking I can burr. I'll still we'll put a loan on something and say, okay, after this is fixed up, I know it will appraise for this because I've seen all the comps.
Yep.
But I likely won't pull out the capital, but I know what the appraisal will be. I know what the numbers could be. Even if I'm buying with a loan, putting 20 or 25% down. Do want to share something I just ran into. Um, After getting, I think it was my eighth loan in my personal name. And so if you're buying real estate, you're always getting your credit pulled. I'm a young guy. I'm super young. I'm 26, so I don't have 25 years of credit history. And so for a while, my credit score is sit at like 700 to like 715 was like my credit score. And I'm using credit, I'm doing things I'm supposed to do, but I'm always getting it pulled trying to buy new houses. And my recent loan, one of my most recent loans, I needed a I think it was a 725 or 735 or something to qualify for the loan. Now, mortgage brokers are going to get it done. If you got a good mortgage broker, they're going to find a way to get it done. And so I think I owed like $400 on one credit card. They said, Chris, if you pay this 400, we've talked to the credit bureaus. They'll bump you up to the 735 we need from like a 715. It was like 20 points for me to qualify for the house. And I'd never run into that. I'm like, hey, I got a pretty decent credit score. It's not 850 or 800, but it's a pretty good one. Good
Yeah.
enough, I thought. But I guess it was for my eighth loan in my name. That's what I needed. And we made it happen. But I wanted to share that because I'd never heard of something like that until I experienced it personally. It might be because things are slowing down a little bit more too, and interest rates are higher. So I wanted people to be aware of that.
Yeah, that's good advice. And two, to piggyback off that, Chris has a way higher income than the majority of folks that are working. And so it's going to take him a longer time to hit his debt to income ratio ceiling if he continues to buy names in his personal name. Whereas, somebody listen to this, myself, we could buy, I don't know, call it 6, 7, 8 properties. And the bank may say, hey, we can't loan you anymore because your debt is too high compared to your income. If you ever reach that, and if you're in real estate long enough and you buy them in your personal name, you will reach that point at some point. The good thing is they have what is called DSCR loans, also known as commercial loans, also known as portfolio loans, that you can take out that is mainly based on how the property is going to perform. And so if you take a loan out on those, it won't affect your personal debt to income ratio, and the bank's not going to look at your personal debt to income ratio as far as letting that affect you if your credit were to be pulled. So like, for example, I have 15 plus properties that are on commercial loans, DSCR loans. And if somebody pulls my credit, those loans don't show on my personal name. And so just know, what Chris was talking about. And then also with the debt to income ratio, you'll eventually get capped with conventional loans in your personal name. That's okay. That's when we open up LLCs and we start doing those DSCR loans. Chris, I'd love for you to speak to the listeners. I feel like a lot of our listeners are folks who haven't quite taken the plunge yet into real estate, or maybe they have a few properties and they want to scale. They're just not sure how. What's your advice to these folks who are a little newer to the industry, that you would give them?
Yeah, I use an app, but I'm not sure what app you use, or you tell your listeners to use, or if you have an app that we should tell people
No,
to
just
use.
roll with
But
it.
okay. But I use an app called Deal Check, and so I run numbers on there very, very frequently, and it's fun. It's like you're playing Monopoly in real life. You're like, okay, I wonder if we could buy this and we could make it work. Um, and so for me personally, if people bring me deals, I've never used a part or gone in with a partner before. We own all the stuff outright ourselves, but I would definitely do that. And so, networking with people that are already in the game, running numbers on deals all the time, listening to podcasts like this, like the Bigger Pockets, like other ones that you think would teach you about real estate. Once you have the numbers and they work, and you find a property that works, pull the trigger on it. The best learning you'll ever get is from like hands-on learning when you're actually in it. I don't think you can lose in real estate unless you buy and you sell quickly. But even if things, go down 10, 15, worst case 20%, and you hold stuff, buy and hold like I do, you'll never lose. And so I'd say dive in. Uh, there's so many people that have done so and that are very successful. Um, so you should be next for sure.
That's great advice. I know I was going to ask one more question and we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
You guys are crushing it in the management space. You said you've kept most of your tenants for all these years. What are some tips that you guys do that have allowed you to be efficient when it comes to managing your properties?
Yeah. One the first thing is I don't always tell my tenants this, but I usually have a three strike rule. I haven't had to utilize it a lot, but me being a baseball guy, the first time they miss a payment or they're late, I should say, not miss, but if they're late, I won't hit them with the late fee the first time. The second time, hey, we got to get on it. I totally understand. You had to pay your kids travel ball. I get it, but listen, this is strike two. The third time, that's when we actually put a late fee on them and their rent. The most important thing when it comes to property management is to make sure that you're proud of the home that they're living in, right? And if you're proud of it, they're going to be proud of it. If they're proud of it, they're not going to give you a really hard time. I'll give you an example. One of my tenants is blind. He actually works for Verizon. He makes really good, makes 70,000 a year, being blind, working for Verizon at the call center. And uh, one Christmas, he texted me and he said, "Chris, I'm just so thankful. for what you do for our family. He said, this time last year, we had a leak in our roof and we had buckets during Christmas now, buckets catching the water from our ceiling. He said, man, I'm just so thankful that we have this amazing townhouse to live in that you've given me and my family. Man, when he said that to me, it made me almost tear up a little bit that I'll get to
Wow.
provide that for his family. And so I always let him know, hey, this is going to be for my kids' college. This is an investment. I want you to know that from the get go, right? But also, you will never have a week where something's not working. You will never have 2 weeks or 3 weeks where you have a leak in this or that, because I take pride in where you live and I want you to take pride in it just as well. And once we've done that, man, the nagging phone calls, they don't come. They're like, hey, you know what, man, this might have happened. Let me see if I can clean it up first. Or this might have happened. Let me see if I can do it. Um, and once we're good to them, they're usually good to us. So that's kind of my thing with the tenants. We love them. We tell them that it is an investment, right? We will go up on rent. We let you know that from the get go, but we're not going to spike it so much that you're pulling out your hair thinking, how in the heck am I going to pay it, right? So we,
Hmm.
we let them know these things up front. The communication is clear, and when the communication is clear, um, it's a win-win for everybody.
I love it. I love it. There's this stigma out there that if you own rental properties, you're a terrible person. I get so many nasty comments on social media, leech, all this, all that. Look, if you're doing it right, like Chris is talking about, you're providing quality, great quality housing for people who cannot buy at this time. I can't control that the system doesn't allow them to buy right now. Chris can't control that. But what we can control is taking broken down, jacked up houses and making them nice so people can have a good place to live.
I got one more thing for you, man. This is
Yeah.
this is the power of being a good person that has a property and renting it out to family. So just being a good-hearted person. There was a family, and we inherited these tenants when we bought this building. Okay, because that is a real thing. I want your listeners to know that sometimes you buy a building and people are still going to live there for the next 4 months before you get your people in there or you renew their lease. And this family was from, let's I'm just not going to say the country, but they're from a foreign country and they're refugees. Okay, there was a church that was paying for this family's um, paying for their rent every single month, and they did it for a year. Now, when I say that they're refugees, I mean they're coming from a country that we fight against, we fought against for many years, and they came from a really really rough place. 3 kids. The guy's working his behind off. Wife and kids don't speak any English, but he is trying. And the rent is 13.75 for a 3 bed, 1 bath duplex. And he said, Chris, I don't know if I'll be able to pay it once the church stops paying. And I looked at this guy. I looked at his kids. Now I've got to make my money. I just bought this thing. Interest rates are at 6.5% when I bought it. And I said to him, I said, man, you know what, man? We've got to figure out a way. I don't want to kick you out because I know there's no other place you'll get for 3 bedrooms in a decent area where your kids will feel safe, that's clean with a good landlord for this rate. And so I don't want you to even try because it's almost impossible to find it. I don't want to see you in a rat race. But we got to figure out a way. I talked to the church. I talked to him. The church said, Chris, because you're such an amazing person, man, and we know that you care about him, and we know that he's trying, we're going to still supplement some of his rent. Whatever he can't pay, come to us. We got you. And you can do stuff like that when you are a kind hearted person and you're a landlord. I'm going to be honest. I don't know if he would have been able to get, I know for a fact he wouldn't have been able to get a 3 bedroom anywhere, but I don't even know if he would have been able to get a 2 bedroom for less than 1,500 where he was trying to live. And so just having that conversation with him, being the person that's able to provide an affordable house for this family, it brings me so much joy. Now,
Yep.
again, I'm going to make my money. I'm a person that wants to do good in the world like I did for this family that's refugees, but I want to do well for my family. I'm making
Mhm.
money so that my kids can go to college for free if they want. I'm making money so that one day my granddaughter and my daughter could have a free wedding of their dreams. So I want to do good for people, but I let them know, hey, I also want to do well with my investments.
I love it, man. I love it. You don't really understand when you're listening to real estate and you haven't jumped in yet, you don't understand truly that you're dealing with people until you get into it. And I probably didn't really understand until the third property I purchased. I got a single mother in there with 2 daughters and a son. And one of the daughters was helping work and the other 2 children were still in school. And I wanted to sell the property. It had gone up in value and there was a good profit to be made. I didn't have to have the money. I was just like, hey, I think this is a good time to sell and then I'll get into a new property. And so I walk in there, and part of the problem is I'd had a management company managing it. So I hadn't met them in person yet. I walk in there to tell them myself. I think this was God. I truly do, because I never go in often to see my tenants at this point, whether right or wrong. It's just how we've got it set up now. But for some reason, I said, I'm going to go over there and tell them personally. And that's not how the flow works when you have a management company. You're not involved.
Yeah.
And I walk in and I'm talking to the lady and I tell her, like, hey, we're going to sell this property. We'll give you a couple months to get out and, let me know if I can help. And she looks at me and I can see one of the kids in the back. I mean, they'd taken care of the place. She's like, well, if there's anything I can do whatsoever to stay here, please let me know. We have moved around so much the last few years for whatever reason. I don't remember if, they got divorced or a husband passed away. She's like, but my kids finally feel like this place is home and it's in good condition. And my daughter's working hard to be able to pay rent. I'm working to be able to pay rent, and whatever we can do to stay, please let me know. And dude, you talk about like almost tearing up. I was standing there. I was like, bro, I'm about to start crying right in front of this lady. And I told her, I said, you know what? Just on the spot. And my contractor was there with me and I could see him looking like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I can't remember her name, but I was like, ma'am, you can stay here as long as you want. As long as you're paying rent, you stay here, unless, I said, here's the only reason I would sell this place is if I hit hard times and my family's about to be impacted or we're going to go into foreclosure, then I'll have to sell the property. I said, but outside of that, you stay as long as you want. And so what I have done, and people may disagree, I have put a rule in place for my personal investment to where as long as somebody is renting it out and they're paying the rent that I set and they're paying it on time and they're not causing problems and they're not missing payments, I will not get rid of them until they leave. And that is just what I've done. Unless it's a circumstance to where I have to do it. Or unless I'm selling to another investor who would let them stay there and agrees to let them stay, which I haven't had to cross that bridge yet. So right or wrong, don't know, but that's what I've done because I realized that, dude, we are dealing with people who, yeah, it's my house. I own the house, but it's their home right now. And, that's one of the things in real estate that people don't talk about enough because they just see numbers, especially before they start. But I'm glad you brought that up. It's a powerful story.
Absolutely, man. That's amazing.
Well, awesome. Well, hey, I am so glad to catch up with you, dude. This was amazing. You're doing so many great things. Where can people find you? Where do you want people to find you? I know you're all over the place. What's a good place for people to get hold of Chris Singleton?
Yeah, man. My website's chrissingleton.com. All my social medias are verified. They're C_Singleton_2. Just Chris Singleton. You'll find me on all the socials. Would love to catch up and talk real estate, or if anybody wants to share their story, I would definitely help you do so. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
That's awesome. And y'all, if you're looking for a keynote speaker for your event, Chris is your guy. An amazing story. He barely, touched on it in our short time today, but an amazing speaker. Like he said, if you're wanting to learn to share your story, he helps people do that. So make sure you reach out to him, give him a follow. He's just a great guy. So everybody who's listening to this podcast, thank you so much for joining us. If you would share it with a friend, 3, 4, 5 people of yours, I know they could benefit from this. And then take a screenshot of you listening to this, put it on your Instagram story, tag me at Finance Cowboy, tag Chris at C_Singleton_2. We'd love to personally tell you thank you for watching the story. And Chris, again, man, I can't thank you enough. Thank you for everything you're doing to make the world a better place, and keep crushing the real estate game.
Will do, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for listening in. If you love this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would share it with a friend right now, or if you would go on social media and make sure you tag me so I can thank you personally for helping me to get this message out. I want you to know that I am so darn grateful for you and grateful that I am on this journey with you. So until next time, we'll talk soon.